The rain poured mercilessly that night, drumming against the roof like 1,000 accusing fingers. Inside a small, dimly lit house, Ethan's rage roared louder than the thunder outside. His voice echoed off the peeling walls, venom dripping with every word. "You think you can disobey me?" he shouted, his hands trembling. Not with fear, but with a fury he could no longer control. Anna stood in the corner, her face streaked with tears, clutching her swollen belly as though the tiny life inside her was her only anchor. It wasn't the first time. The bruises had become stories her body no longer wanted to tell. She had learned silence, the kind of silence that screams. She whispered, "Please, Ethan, not tonight. The baby." But before she could finish, his hand met her cheek with a brutal force that sent her crumpling to the floor. The world went blurry. The sound of her body hitting the ground seemed to snap him out of his madness, but too late. When he saw her lying there, gasping weakly, his chest tightened. Panic replaced anger. "Anna, Anna!" he cried, shaking her shoulder, but her eyes fluttered closed. The sight of blood trickling onto the cold tiles made his heart pound with something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. Real fear. He scooped her up, his arms shaking, and rushed her into his car. The rain blurred the windshield, and his mind was racing faster than the wipers could clear. Every mile to the hospital felt like a confession. He could hear her soft groans, fading. "Please, don't leave me," he murmured, tears mixing with rain on his face. "I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it." The words tasted like poison now. When they reached the hospital, nurses rushed to take her from his arms. "She's pregnant." She fell, he lied, voice trembling, but his eyes gave him away. They pushed him aside as they wheeled her through the emergency doors. He stood there, drenched, watching her disappear down a corridor that seemed endless. Minutes felt like hours. He paced the waiting area, fingers clutching his head. The white walls mocked him with their stillness. Every sound, the ticking clock, the distant cries of other patients, cut deeper into his guilt. He saw flashes of their past, their wedding day, her laughter, the way she used to look at him with complete trust. When had he become this monster? A doctor finally appeared, his face grave. Ethan jumped to his feet. "How is she? Please, tell me she's okay." The doctor hesitated before speaking. "She's critical. There's heavy internal bleeding. We're trying to save both her and the baby." The word struck him like lightning. Both her and the baby. He sank into the chair, his breath ragged. His hands trembled uncontrollably. The thought that he might lose them both clawed at his soul. He buried his face in his palms, whispering the only prayer he could remember from his childhood. Hours passed. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air. When the doctor returned, his eyes said what his lips didn't have to. Ethan's stomach dropped. "We managed to save her," the doctor finally said. But he paused, his voice heavy. "She lost a baby." The world tilted. Ethan froze, unable to breathe. The room blurred as a high-pitched ringing filled his ears. He stumbled toward the hallway, desperate to see her. The nurse led him to her room. Anna lay still, pale and fragile, her eyes closed. Machines beeped steadily beside her, the only sound of life. He stepped closer, guilt crushing him with every breath. Her face, once full of light, was a canvas of bruises he had painted himself. He reached for her hand, cold and limp. "Anna," his voice cracked. "I'm so sorry." Her eyelids fluttered open weakly. She looked at him, not with hate, but with something far worse, emptiness. "Why, Ethan?" she whispered, voice barely audible. "Why did you hurt us?" He tried to speak, but no words came. The silence between them screamed louder than his apologies ever could. She turned her face away, tears sliding down her bruised skin. Our baby didn't deserve this. He fell to his knees beside her bed, sobbing. The walls seemed to close in, suffocating him with memories of every cruel word, every strike, every time she had begged him to stop. For the first time, he saw himself through her eyes, and he couldn't bear the reflection. Days passed, but the guilt didn't fade. Anna refused to see him. She turned her back each time he entered the room. He brought flowers, her favorite lilies, but they wilted untouched. He wrote letters she never opened. He waited outside her door, sometimes all night, hoping she'd let him in. But she never did. One morning, when he arrived with breakfast, her room was empty. The nurse said she had been discharged earlier, alone. No forwarding address, no message, nothing. She was gone. Ethan's world crumbled. He searched every place she might go, their old apartment, her sister's house, even the church where they'd exchanged vows. But she had vanished. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. He stopped going to work, stopped sleeping. The house felt like a graveyard of memories, her laughter echoing in every corner, the faint scent of her perfume haunting the air. Years passed. Ethan tried to drown his guilt in alcohol, but only deepened the shadows. Every night he dreamed of her, of their unborn child, whose face he would never see. He had everything once, a loving wife, a future, a home, and he had destroyed it with his own hands. Then one cold afternoon, while visiting the hospital for a charity event, something stopped him in his tracks. A nurse walked by with a little girl, holding her hand gently. The child couldn't have been more than 6. She had Anna's eyes, those same deep hazel eyes that once held the universe. Ethan's breath caught. He turned pale, his heart pounding in disbelief. The nurse noticed his expression. "Are you all right, sir?" He nodded numbly, eyes fixed on the child. That's when he saw her, Anna, standing a few feet away, older, quieter, but still breathtaking. She was talking to another doctor, her tone calm, her presence peaceful. But when she saw him, her smile faded. Time froze between them. Ethan's knees almost gave way. The little girl tugged at Anna's hand. "Mommy, who's that man?" she asked innocently. Anna's lips trembled as she looked at Ethan. Her eyes glistened with tears, but her voice was steady. "No one, sweetheart," she whispered softly. "Just someone from a past we've already left behind." Ethan's throat tightened. "Anna, please." His voice was desperate, trembling. "Is she?" Anna didn't let him finish. She simply shook her head, a tear escaping down her cheek. "You lost your chance to know," she said quietly. "You lost everything the night you raised your hand." He wanted to say something, anything, but no words could mend what was broken. As she turned away, walking down the hallway with their daughter, Ethan felt a pain deeper than any wound he had ever inflicted. It wasn't just regret. It was the death of every dream he had destroyed with his own cruelty. And for the first time, he understood some punishments don't come from the world. They come from within, and they never end. He stood there motionless, his feet glued to the cold hospital floor as the sound of Anna's footsteps faded into the distance. The child's tiny laughter echoed faintly down the hall, a melody that pierced through the cracks of his soul. His chest tightened, and he could barely breathe. That sound, innocent, pure, felt like both a gift and a curse. He wanted to run after them, to fall to his knees and beg for forgiveness, to tell the little girl who he really was. But what right did he have anymore? He was a stranger to them now, a ghost from a life that no longer existed. Ethan's trembling hands clutched the edge of a nearby chair as he sank into it. His mind was a blur of memories, every moment flashing before him like shards of broken glass. Anna smiled the day they learned she was pregnant. Her laughter when he'd painted the nursery yellow, because he didn't know the baby's gender yet. The way she'd rested her head on his chest at night, whispering, "We're going to be such a happy family." Those memories felt like they belonged to someone else, a better man he'd buried under years of anger and pride. He had once thought power made him strong, control, dominance, fear. But now, sitting alone under the harsh hospital lights, he realized it had only made him hollow. Every cruel word, every strike, every moment of rage had chipped away at the man he could have been. And now all that was left was the echo of his sins. When he finally left the hospital, the world outside felt eerily quiet. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and glistening under the streetlights. He walked aimlessly, hands in his pockets, head bowed. The city moved around him, cars rushing by, people talking, laughing, but it all felt distant, like he was trapped behind an invisible wall separating him from the living. Days turned into nights, and nights into endless silence. He stopped showing up at his office. The empire he'd built, the company that had once been his pride, started crumbling without him noticing. He didn't care anymore. Money, success, status, none of it mattered. He had lost something priceless, something that no amount of wealth could ever buy back. But no matter how much he tried to move on, those eyes haunted him. The child's eyes. The same soft, deep hazel as Anna's. There was something in the way she looked at him, even for that brief moment. Curiosity mixed with innocence that tore through him like lightning. He found himself waking up in the middle of the night, sweating, whispering her name though he didn't even know it. He tried to find them again. He visited the hospital multiple times, hoping to accidentally see them. He asked around discreetly, talked to nurses, even tried to pull a few strings through old contacts. But no one would tell him anything. Anna had made sure to disappear again, just as she had before. She wanted peace, and that peace didn't include him. Months later, fate played another cruel trick. He was driving down an old part town one evening when he spotted a small community center. A banner outside read, Healing Hearts Foundation, supporting women and children of abuse. He almost kept driving, but something about those words hit him like a hammer. His heart began to race, and before he knew it, he had parked and walked inside. The center smelled of fresh paint and hope. Women sat in circles, sharing stories of pain and survival. Children played quietly in a corner, laughter mingling with the soft murmur of conversation. And then he saw her, Anna, standing at the front of the room, speaking gently to a group of women. She looked radiant, stronger than he remembered. The fragile woman he had once broken was gone. In her place stood someone powerful, healed, fearless. Her voice was calm yet commanding as she spoke. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become. Those words hit him harder than any blow could. For a moment, he couldn't move. She didn't notice him right away, and he was grateful. He just watched her, feeling both awe and devastation. She had rebuilt herself in the ashes he left behind, and she had done it without him. But then, as the session ended, their eyes met. For a split second, the air froze. The room seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them. She didn't flinch or look away this time. Instead, she held his gaze with a calm strength that made him feel smaller than ever. She walked toward him slowly, her steps measured. Why are you here, Ethan? She asked quietly. He swallowed hard. I didn't know you worked here. I wanted to see you, to talk. There's nothing left to talk about, she said softly, though there was no anger in her tone, just a sad kind of acceptance. I saw her, he whispered. Our daughter. Anna's eyes softened for a moment, then hardened again as she crossed her arms. You saw a glimpse of what you lost, she said. That's all. Anna, please, he begged, voice trembling. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I was a monster, but I've changed. I'm not that man anymore. I've spent every day since that night hating myself. She looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. Do you think guilt erases pain? She asked. Do you think because you've suffered, it balances what you did? He lowered his head, unable to answer. Anna continued, her voice softer now. I don't hate you, Ethan. I did once. I wanted you to feel the same pain you gave me. But then I realized that hate keeps you tied to what broke you. So I let go. Not for you, for me, for our daughter. He looked up, tears glistening in his eyes. She doesn't even know I exist. And that's why she smiles the way she does, Anna replied gently. Her words sliced through him like a blade, but she wasn't cruel, just honest. She turned to leave, but he reached out, his voice breaking. Can I at least know her name? Anna paused. Her hand tightened around the strap of her bag. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, in a whisper almost too soft to hear, she said, Her name is Hope. And with that, she walked away, leaving him standing in the empty hallway, her words echoing in his ears. Hope, that name became his anchor. Every day after that, he tried to live differently, not to earn forgiveness, but to become the kind of man she wouldn't have to hide from. He joined support groups, volunteered at shelters, and spoke to men about breaking the cycle of violence. It was slow, painful work, but for the first time, he felt purpose in something beyond his own regret. Sometimes from a distance, he'd see Anna and Hope at the park. He never approached them, though every instinct begged him to. He'd watch Hope laughing, running through the grass, her hair catching the sunlight. Every time she smiled, a piece of him both healed and broke all over again. He carried her name in his heart like a silent prayer. Hope, the one thing he had destroyed, and yet the one thing that still lived on, breathing life into everything he had once killed within himself. And though Anna never looked his way again, he didn't blame her, because now he finally understood the depth of what he had done, and the kind of redemption that could only be earned through time, silence, and endless repentance. But deep down, beneath the layers of regret, a question began to stir, one he didn't dare speak aloud. Would fate ever allow him a second chance to prove he could be more than the man who broke everything he loved? Years slipped away like sand through Ethan's fingers, each day marked not by success or pleasure, but by quiet acts of redemption. He became a man the world hardly recognized, humble, withdrawn, yet strangely peaceful in his solitude. His company, once a towering empire built on arrogance and control, had been sold off long ago. He used what remained of his wealth to fund shelters for women and children who had lived the same nightmare he once inflicted. He never put his name on any of them. He didn't need recognition, only the fragile comfort that maybe somewhere someone's pain would be lighter because of his guilt. And yet, every night, as he sat by the window of his small apartment, staring at the stars, he thought of them, Anna and Hope. He wondered what stories Hope must hear before bedtime, if she had Anna's laugh or his stubbornness. He imagined her first day of school, her drawings on the fridge, the way she'd grow into the light he never deserved to stand beside. He never dared approach them, not even once. Some loves are too sacred to taint again. One late evening, years later, fate circled back in the gentlest way imaginable. Ethan was invited to a charity gala, one organized by the very foundation Anna had built from the ruins of her past. Healing Hearts Foundation. The invitation read. It was the 10th anniversary of the center's founding, and his shelter, unknowingly funded under a different name, was one of the contributors being honored. He almost didn't go. His first instinct was to avoid reopening old wounds. But something inside him, something wordless and deep, urged him to attend, not for recognition, but to witness what she had built from his darkness. So he went. The ballroom shimmered with warm lights and quiet elegance. Music played softly, laughter mingled with the clinking of glasses, and the atmosphere was filled with an unspoken grace. Ethan stood quietly near the back, unnoticed, dressed simply in a black suit. His hair had turned silver, his eyes heavy with years of reflection. He looked nothing like the man who had once wielded his power, like a weapon. Then he saw her. Anna stepped onto the stage in a long emerald dress, her presence serene, her aura commanding yet gentle. The audience quieted instantly. When she spoke, her voice was strong and steady, filled with warmth that wrapped around every listener. 10 years ago, she began, this foundation was nothing but an idea born from pain, from a woman who thought her story had ended in tragedy. But sometimes the end of a story is just the beginning of another kind, one written in strength, in healing, and in hope. Ethan's breath caught. The way she said hope was like a soft thunder in his heart. Anna continued, her words flowing like poetry. We built this place so no woman would ever feel powerless again, so no child would ever grow up believing love must come with pain. Tonight, we celebrate not the scars, but the survival, the courage to rebuild, to forgive, to move forward. The room erupted in applause, but Ethan couldn't join. His throat tightened, his chest heavy with emotion. He wanted to tell her she had done it. She had become the light in a world he once drowned in shadows. When the applause faded, a young woman walked on stage beside Anna, tall, graceful, with soft hazel eyes that mirrored the ones he had dreamed of every night. Hope. Ethan's heart stopped. She was grown now, poised and radiant, her smile gentle yet confident. I'd like to say a few words, she said into the microphone, her voice carrying the same delicate warmth her mother's once did. I grew up surrounded by women who taught me strength doesn't come from fighting others. It comes from choosing to be kind, even when the world hasn't been kind to you. She paused, glancing at her mother lovingly. My mom taught me that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about freeing yourself from the past. And sometimes It's about showing mercy to someone who never asked for it. The words pierced through Ethan's soul. His eyes brimmed with tears as he watched her. The daughter he never got a hold, the life he had once destroyed but who now stood there, whole and shining. Then Hope continued, her gaze scanning the audience. There's someone here tonight who doesn't know I know him, a man who helped fund this foundation's shelters for years, anonymously. I only learned recently that without his support, hundreds of women and children wouldn't have found safety. I don't know if he's here tonight, but if he is, her voice trembled slightly. I want him to know that I forgive him, because my mother taught me that hate keeps you chained, but forgiveness sets you free, and I choose to live free. A hush fell over the room. Ethan felt his heart shatter and heal at once. He didn't realize tears were streaming down his face until he felt their warmth. The people around him began whispering, trying to guess who she was talking about, but he stayed still, invisible in the shadows, clutching his hands together as if to keep from falling apart. Anna glanced briefly in his direction. Their eyes met across the sea of people. She didn't smile, but her gaze softened. A quiet acknowledgement, a silent truce. For the first time in years, he didn't see anger or sorrow in her eyes. He saw peace. After the event ended, Ethan stepped outside into the night. The city lights glimmered like scattered stars. He stood beneath them, breathing in the cool air, feeling something he hadn't felt in decades, release. A soft voice behind him said, "You weren't going to say goodbye?" He turned. It was Anna, her shawl wrapped loosely around her shoulders, her hair catching the glow of the street lamp. "I didn't want to disturb your peace," he murmured, his voice rough. "You've built something beautiful. You don't need my shadow near it." She looked at him quietly for a long time, then said, "You can't undo the past, Ethan. But I can see you've spent your years trying to make sure others don't live through what I did. That matters. More than you think." He nodded, his eyes glistening. "I didn't do it for forgiveness. I did it because it's the only way I could keep breathing." Anna smiled faintly, a bittersweet curve of her lips. "Maybe that's enough." Before she turned to leave, she hesitated and said softly, "She knows, you know, about you. She figured out long ago." His heart lurched. "And she still forgives me?" "She forgives the man you became," Anna said, "not the one you were. There's a difference." Tears filled his eyes as he whispered, "Thank you." Anna gave him a long, searching look, one that carried years of pain, strength, and quiet closure, then nodded gently and walked away. Ethan stood under the fading glow of the street lamp long after she was gone. The city hummed around him, but for once, the noise didn't feel hollow. Somewhere out there, the daughter he'd never held carried his name in her blood, but not his sins in her heart. Somewhere, Anna slept peacefully, free of fear. And as Ethan gazed up at the sky, he whispered to the stars, "Thank you for giving me a second chance, not to fix the past, but to finally understand it." A faint smile touched his lips as the night wind brushed against his face. The burden he had carried for years began to lift, replaced by something fragile yet eternal, peace. He knew he would spend the rest of his days quietly, doing what he could for others, never asking for recognition, never seeking redemption. Because some stories don't end with grand gestures or return love.